It's April 13th, 2020, and little did we know that on this Easter weekend in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, the course of one NASCAR driver's life would change forever. Over the span of only 5 years, Kyle Larson went from overachieving Chip Ganassi driver to fired and banished from the sport to arguably the greatest driver on Earth. But beyond that, Larson's story is one of forgiveness and second chances. This is NASCAR's greatest redemption story. Growing up as a West Coast dirt racer, Larson made a name for himself at the young age of 7, driving USACs and sprint cars to great success, earning him the nickname of Young Money. While Larson originally had aspirations to race in IndyCar, Chip Ganassi saw talent in the young man and signed him as a development driver for NASCAR. Though it was completely outside of his wheelhouse, it didn't take long for Larson to start racking up wins in stock cars. And as a result, he left from the K&N Pro Series all the way to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in only one season. Almost instantaneously, it seemed like Larson's Xfinity career would be remembered for him being launched hood first into the catch fence at Daytona in his first career start. But only a few weeks later, Larson would stone the garage with a second place finish at Bristol after a hard-fought battle with the Xfinity Series juggernaut Kyle Busch. Though Larson would be shut out of victory lane in his rookie season, he had more than enough close calls racing for wins against proven Cup Series drivers that Ganassi felt comfortable moving up to the Cup Series in 2014 to drive the number 42 car. Let that sink in for a minute. This is a kid who hadn't set foot inside of a stock car until 2012, and only 2 years later, he was joining the big leagues. Anybody with a brain would have told you this was a terrible idea. Just look at other prospects like Joey Logano and Casey Atwood, who were brought up way too quickly and ended up flaming out in their first career Cup rides. And at best, Chip Ganassi Racing was maybe a fringe chase contender most years. In the 12 seasons leading up to Larson's arrival, the team only had 11 wins. No way this rookie, this dirt boy, finishes top 30 in points in Chip Ganassi. Yeah? Wait, what? Oh, he had 17 top 10s and finished 17th in points in his rookie season? Well, this just got interesting. While Larson had already impressed with several top 5 finishes early in the season, it wouldn't be until Chicagoland in September when Larson truly got everyone's attention. While Brad Keselowski may have cruised away with the win in the closing laps, the battle for second is what everybody was watching. As for the final 6 laps, Larson battled tooth and nail with 4-time champion Jeff Gordon. And at this moment I thought to myself, what the heck are you doing, kid? Jeff needs those points more than you do, you're slowing him down! But for Larson, who had idolized Jeff Gordon since childhood, just getting to race so hard alongside him, not even for the win, was a dream come true. And Gordon was equally as stunned in his post-race interview.
That's just two guys that are wheeling it, and yeah, really proud of Kevin Larson.
I think everybody watching at this moment knew that this wouldn't be the last time these two interacted. While 2015 looked like more of the same, in 2016 Larson proved himself to be a contender. While many wins slipped away from him, he finally managed to park his number 42 Chevrolet in victory lane at Michigan, and was consistent enough in the playoffs to finish 9th in points. The first time a Ganassi driver had broken into the top 10 since Juan Pablo Montoya in 2009. In 2017, Larson hit the ground running, leading the points for most of the early season. But it was also a season that began with 4 heartbreakers. For starters, Larson led on the final lap of the 2017 Daytona 500 only to run out of gas and finish 12th. Then at Atlanta, Las Vegas, and Phoenix, he scored 3 consecutive second place finishes. But finally, in race number 5, he scored his second career victory at Auto Club Speedway. Larson would go on to win 4 races in 2017, setting an all-time record for the team in one season, and would again set a personal best with an 8th place points finish. He would go on to finish 9th again in 2018, and finally 6th in 2019. Entering 2020, many finally looked at Larson to be the title contender many hoped he would be. But alas, the story ended up being anything but.
Kyle Larson was suspended by Chip Ganassi Racing for comments he made during one of the iRacing events on Sunday. There is the statement from NASCAR regarding the suspension, the member conduct guidelines.
With Larson being suspended from NASCAR and fired from Chip Ganassi Racing, many were left wondering if NASCAR's most promising talent had just turned into its biggest bust. With nothing else left to do, Larson returned to what he did best: dirt racing. Going on an absolute tear, Larson would win 46 dirt races across various divisions that year. Despite being primarily a stock car driver for the last 8 years, he ended 2020 with a 50% win rate on dirt. These numbers were absolutely ludicrous. Many assumed that with Larson finding such radical success in the dirt world that he would simply never return to NASCAR. But in October later that year, Larson put out a statement revealing that he completed NASCAR sensitivity training, and even went above and beyond to donate to and volunteer with various organizations that teach young African American children about auto racing. Chip Ganassi and Jeff Gordon also supported Larson behind closed doors, urging him not to give up on his NASCAR career. Anthony Martin of the Urban Youth Racing School also went on record saying that Larson's actions spoke louder than his words. Or rather, one particular word.
But the question I had for them when they came at me about this was, have you ever met Kyle before? Do you know Kyle? I know that you heard about him in the media and all this other kind of stuff, but do you know him as a person?
And shortly afterward, it was officially announced that Kyle Larson would be joining Hendrick Motorsports to pilot the legendary number 5 car. Finally, after years of waiting, it seemed like Larson had finally made it to the team that he was always destined to end up at. Even pre-controversy, I think Larson likely would have still ended up at Hendrick at the end of 2020. As far as I know, Larson didn't have a contract with Ganassi after that season, and he always looked like the top candidate to replace Jimmy Johnson. The only thing that I think truly changed as a result of this controversy was the number and the sponsor on the car, as Hendrick opted to move the much less controversial Alex Bowman over to the 48. Heading into 2021 though, some fans weren't sure what to expect. Larson was a good driver at Ganassi, but was he good enough for Hendrick? After nearly a year out of a stock car, would he even be a playoff contender? These were all serious concerns that fans had. And of course, what followed can only be described as maybe the greatest season of the last decade.
As Kyle Larson wins Las Vegas. Kyle Larson wins the Coca-Cola 600 as Kyle Larson wins at Sonoma. Kyle Larson returns to Nashville Superspeedway a winner. And Larson is going to win at the Glen. Out of 4, Larson's going to win at Bristol. He will win at the Charlotte Roval. Kyle Larson, a dominant performance. He leads 256 laps. Larson wins at Kansas. Kyle Larson a year ago watched the race from North Carolina. Today, he's a Cup Series champion.
From jobless in 2020 to a champion in 2021, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better comeback than this in all of NASCAR history. And if you include his dirt racing stats from this year, then Larson won a crazy 33 times in 2021. Though, what's crazier is that this is a regression from 2020. And while it's extremely difficult to reach these same heights in the much more equalized next-gen car, Larson still leads the way as the next-gen's most winningest driver, which just goes to show Larson can drive anything on wheels. And I think he more than proved that with his impressive run at the Indianapolis 500 earlier this year. Many have criticized him for claiming to be a better driver than Max Verstappen, but you know why he's doing this, right? It seems pretty obvious to me that he's trying to drag Max into a NASCAR race one of these days. Something that would make absolute headlines. Some may call it cocky or egotistical, but I genuinely think Larson is playing the part to perfection. Love him or hate him, he gets more people in the motorsports world to talk about NASCAR than anybody. He's arguably the only driver in the field right now who has the potential to be a world-renowned superstar. Something that NASCAR has severely lacked since we lost Jeff Gordon, Dale Jr., and Tony Stewart. One of the reasons why I am a Kyle Larson fan is because he is one of the few drivers left who actually speaks his mind. In a world full of squeaky clean corporate NASCAR drivers, he's the one guy out there saying stuff like, "Hey, I think I'm the best driver in the world." And honestly, he's kinda earned the right to say that. Does he drive a little too in over his head at times? He sure does. And that's the other reason why myself and many others love him. Larson is never one to take the safe route. He is bold and brash in his approach to racing. Larson has only ever cared about one thing, and that's bringing home the trophy. If that means he's gonna shoot the gap between Blaney and Austin Dillon when he could have just held back to make the Final Four, he's gonna do it. If it means borderline destroying his car against the wall to get another 10th of speed, he's gonna do it. If it means he'll close so fast to your back bumper that he risks hitting the sand barrels, he's gonna do it, and it's fun as heck to watch. Maybe you don't like that he said a bad word one time and basically got promoted for it. Or maybe you don't like that he's like 90s Jeff Gordon or 2000s Jimmy Johnson and wins all the dang time, but at least he makes it a spectacle. There's always going to be a top dog in racing that people love to root for or against, but I'm happy that for now at least, that dog is Kyle Larson. This year, he slid in front of Blaney for second most popular driver in NASCAR, and as far as I'm concerned, he's doing way more to help grow the sport than the guy in first is. I think even die-hard Chase Elliott fans can admit that much. So here's to Kyle Larson, the greatest redemption story in all of NASCAR, and a reminder that regardless of who you are and how talented you are, that everyone deserves a second chance. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to subscribe and check out dailydownforce.com for more awesome NASCAR content.